Alright, so welcome back. Today, what I'll be covering is not functions in actual fact. Because I thought quite long and hard about this of whether or not I should actually immediately go into functions, because I realized that there is a potential thing that people do have to know when it comes down to understanding personality and basically profiling people, right? Which is the underlying assumption or use case of personality tests. So in this video, what I'm going to go through is that what are the certain considerations that you must know and your relation towards even MBTI to a certain extent, right? And to have a healthy amount of skepticism when it comes down to utilizing MBTI, because you can say that if you put too much faith and too much belief into MBTI and seeing it as well, because the foundation of it is based on the sound theory of a very smart psychologist, then you can say that you actually make a erroneous judgment call over there, right? Because again, the psychologist, as good and as wise and as smart as this person is, would be prone to mistakes, and there will be inefficiency of the framework, because you can say that in the realm of understanding human behavior, maybe even creating any sort of framework, right? Even if we talk about established theories such as operant conditioning or classical conditioning, these are still frameworks that is developed based on observations. So you can say that the frameworks work and they make sense, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a framework hypothetically out there that is the most accurate way to actually describe a feeling. So what I'm just basically saying is that you have to be wary about the inefficiencies, and basically this is the topic, and this video I'm going to cover all those issues, right? So in any case, the reason why this is a concern is, as I mentioned prior, is potentially, if you are not careful, you're going to throw yourself into a lot of pitfall. So what are some of these pitfall, right? The biggest concern that I have when I thought of, okay, maybe I should immediately go into function, is that I understand that for me, I utilize MBTI with my very specific psyche, which is I police a lot of my thoughts, right? In the sense of, okay, is this a true statement? Is this a true statement? If I read something on MBTI, I would think of it as like, okay, is this true? Does it make sense? But even beyond the policing of the internal thoughts process, because, well, you can say that anybody can do that. Anybody can have a healthy amount of skepticism about the information that they come into their psyche, so to speak. But there's also another additional aspect, which is how we actually perceive personality tests. So the important question is to ask ourselves, why do people take personality tests? So this transcends beyond just MBTI, right? This goes into enneagrams, this goes into Ocean as well, and you can say that Ocean is a personality test that is much more established in statistics, right? And there's more, you can say that it's more accurate, right? People are much more likely to use Ocean, and you can say that even clinical psychologists to a certain extent in modern times utilize Ocean. Will there be a future framework that is better than Ocean? I would say that hypothetically there is, right? So I can even say that Ocean is not going to be the perfect framework, but you can say that it's the framework that at least what experts at the current moment are able to agree on is that that's the most accurate. So when I say personality test, I'm not just talking about MBTI, I'm talking about Ocean, right? I'm talking about DISC, I'm talking about Enneagram, and I'll even lump the personality test that is not, that doesn't have any sort of actual theory behind that, right? So I'll actually throw horoscope in here, and I'll even throw those if you are, wow, not if you're young enough, if you're old enough, then you can say that, like, you know, there's a period where Facebooks have those really stupid personality tests, right? Like, for example, what Harry Potter house are you, hypothetically? So the question is, why do people take personality tests? The way that I think about this is because of one thing. People in general like to believe that they like choices. But I'll go as far to say that in actuality, people don't like choices. You can say that people want things such as freedom. And you can even say that, well, Ilong, you like to hound upon the importance of sense of autonomy, right? You can say that objective freedom and objective autonomy is different from the sense of autonomy and the belief of freedom. So, why I say that people in general don't like freedom? Because you can say that for the human animal in general, and you can say that this is largely because of our feelings, the animal side of the human being, you can say that naturally human beings do not like to think. What do I mean? If I give you a very complex mathematical equation that have something that look like this, and then maybe n equals to 0, and then something, and then complex equation of 1 plus etc, right? And then maybe this have a certain amount of dividing by a denominator, and then this have like a square, this have a square root within it. Whenever people look at equations like this, most people's brain shut down. They will be like, I won't waste time to actually figure this out. There's only going to be a subset of people who enjoys looking at this, or maybe they don't even enjoy it, right? It's just their instinct of like, okay, I need to figure out what this means. Like, what is this? How does this relate to this? How is this? How is this? And then form it into a logical equation that they can understand before they actually solve this. As far as I'm concerned, mass majority of human beings would rather take this whole equation and throw it into ChatGPT for ChatGPT to give them the answer, and then they'll be like, well, that's a wrap. ChatGPT tell me that this is equals to 42, then this is equals to 42. Does this mean that people who actually think in terms of the equation is special or better, or that fundamentally anybody who don't think about this is flawed? No, I don't think that's the case. Because I believe that human beings are not built on the basis, and you can even say that to a certain extent animals as a whole are not built for the basis of performance. Right? The goal of human being is not performance. Right? The goal of human being is efficient or optimal performance. So what's the difference between, maybe you can say that if I have to distinguish this, I'll say maximum. What's the difference between maximum performance and efficient and optimal performance? This example exists, right? You can say that for computers, be it the phone that you are using right now, or the computer that you are using this to watch this video, or the laptop, whichever, right? You can say that there exists a super version of that, right? A phone that have double the RAM, a computer that have double the RAM, double the memory, double the everything, right? The screen display, etc, and even double the batteries. The issue with maximum performance is that, well, then you need maximum resources. So if you have that hyper supercomputer in your home, it's going to take up a lot of electricity. So this is going to affect your bills, right? Then it becomes the issue of, does it make sense for you to actually own a computer that's going to cause your bills to skyrocket? So the issue is that, well, if people really want to sell computer and want people to continue using computers, then probably what they want to do is that they want to make this efficient. So you can say that for an animal, they probably do not want to expend too much energy, right? Because you can say that, again, going back to your brain internal processes, when you think about things, it requires mental energy, regardless of how you conceptualize mental energy, right? The way that I see it is just that, well, impulses are what runs our minds, is almost equivalent to electricity, and any additional thoughts is going to have to generate some sort of energy and some sort of actions, right? And you can even say that to a certain extent, these actions are what cause body language. So if, let's say, I'm lying because I have extra processes running through my brain when I'm thinking in terms of an answer, because I need to invent something out from nowhere, then the body language is the byproduct of that action. So when it comes down to the efficient performance, usually what an animal will basically do is that the animal will go into the human bias, right? So for us, we have human biases, and some of these human biases you can say is confirmation. One of it is confirmational bias, which is basically I have a theory in mind, and then I find all the information that supports this theory, and I ignore all information that goes against this theory. So this is one of the ways that my mind can actually shortcut the internal thinking process, right? And this is what makes it efficient, but it doesn't make it accurate. And you can say that in order for you to, if what defines a thinker is how resilient they are against the mental biases, right? How aware are they? So for example, survivor bias, if let's say you have an airplane, and this is a very classic example when it comes to survivor bias, right? If it goes on a war mission and it comes back, and what they notice is that, like, okay, it's being shot at the wings, then you can say that the idea is, well, if let's say we want to reinforce this airplane, we don't reinforce the point that is being shot by the wings, we reinforce the points that is not shot by the wings, because you can say that those planes that get shot in the wings get to fly back to base, while those that get shot in somewhere else doesn't get to fly back to base, right? So this is one example of survivor bias. So why am I sharing bias? Why am I sharing in terms of efficiency, right? Because it goes back to the fundamental question that we are trying to address right now. Why do people take personality tests? Because you can say that, why do I want to figure out and spend all the time to actually learn about psychology, to actually figure out who I am as a person, when it's so much easier for me to take a maybe 30 minutes test for people to sort me out into 16 personalities? And by the way, 16 personalities, is it objective that there's only 16 personalities? No, I don't think so. I think that hypothetically, if somebody wants to expand upon the theory, this 16 can actually shrink, or this 16 can actually expand. For me personally, if I'm using this framework to actually profile, I actually only consider 4 types of personalities. So you can say that, like, well, there's 16 personalities. As far as I'm concerned, if you fall into this 4th quadrant, I'm dealing with you exactly the same way. So again, it's always, whenever you're using this as profiling, right, you have to be very wary about the information that you take in, that the information that you actually utilize. You can learn the theories for fun. You can learn the theories, just for your own knowledge, and you can even say that this knowledge may be able to expand upon something else, but you must always be wary that whenever you're utilizing this, that you do not fall into certain traps. So before I actually go into traps, and I know that basically what I'm sharing is just on other things so far, right, is that why do people take personality tests is, again, it's a shortcut method, right? I don't know too much about myself, and you can say that to a certain extent there's a certain wisdom of trusting personality tests. So if let's say you are young and naive, you are maybe 13 years old, you are still trying to figure yourself out, because you can say that, well, your brain is only starting to develop into the part where you potentially can start to reason and everything. Then you can say that, well, I don't trust my knowledge, I don't trust my experience, and that's very wise of you to actually think that way, right? Because the wrong way to actually see it is that I'm 13 years old, I'm wise, I'm an adult, I'm smart beyond my years, and because of that, I know everything about psychology. You can even say that that line of thinking is actually worse. So what you do is that you trust some expert online who creates personality tests, be it horoscope, be it MBTI, Enneagram, etc., to actually tell you what you are. And then maybe happen that they tell you that, congratulations, you took the test and you are an INTP. Then what you'll do is that, okay, I'm going to go read INTP. Or you can even say that, like, well, they're going to tell you that you're a Cancerian. If let's say you are a horoscope, right? And then you're going to go read what is a Cancerian. And based on what you read, you are likely to think in a way of, like, that's me, right? That is me. And when you start to use I am statements, by the way, like I am statements, right? If you want to use psychology as a form of human influence, you must be very wary of I am statements. Because I am statements, when it comes down to neuro-linguistic programming, which is the complex way to actually say that how your brain actually works and how your brain processes information, I am statements is one of the deepest level of information. When I say that I am an accountant, versus the statement of I do accounting, or I work as an accountant, versus the statement of I am an accountant, these two sentences have the same objective meaning but have different subjective meaning. Which means to say that You can even say that the statement of I am an accountant is a form of or representative of who I am as a person. Whereas I do accounting is just a task. It's like taking out the garbage. It's like washing clothes. It's like cooking. So it's even different. It's different from like, oh, I cook on my free time versus, my hobby is to cook. Or you can say that I am a chef. Or you can say that, what I enjoy is cuisine or in a way. So, right? I know that the chef example is not the best way to actually describe it because you can say that the action of doing the thing doesn't really describe it. But you can say the same thing as martial art, for example. I do martial art on my free time versus I am an martial artist. And the idea of, I play guitar versus I am a guitarist. So I am statements is very dangerous, right? And the issue is that when people read about their personalities, then they will form certain attachment to that description. So now what you are basically saying is that no, it's not that I typed as an INTP, I am an INTP. Now, what is the issue with this, right? Why can't personalities be ourselves? So personalities be equals to our type. What is the fundamental issue when it comes down to personalities being our type? The analogy that I can give is this. How personality test works, and you can say that if, let's say, hypothetically right now, if somebody were to design a personality test, you can say that it's an observation of the intrinsic, or rather you can think of it as like, the stats, right? The base stats of the person. So if, let's say, I'm using the functions where I can say that introverted thinking, introverted feeling, extroverted feeling, introverted sensory, extroverted sensory, and introverted intuition, and then extroverted intuition, right? So you can say that there is these 8 different categories, and these 8 different categories have a certain amount of scores. So if, let's say, you see that this is a bar chart, right? I know that I'm not describing this very well, but think of this as a bar chart. So this is basically stated this way. You can say that for anybody who is designing a personality test, they are observing the different descriptors, and because of that, you can say that, maybe I observe certain patterns. I observe that this is quite high. I notice that this is quite high. I notice that this is probably high to a certain extent relatively, and then I observe that maybe this is quite high, and because of that, then you are this type. So what they're basically doing is that they're observing you, and based on certain patterns that they observe, they type you, and maybe as INTP, which, by the way, this is not the functions of INTP, right? This is just using an example. Don't see it as like, INTP is TIFI, or FESENI. No, that's not the case, right? I'm just using this as an illustration. The issue exists when you see it as I am an INTP, and because of that, I must always act in terms of an INTP. Whereas the reverse is that you are a personality that happens to qualify to be INTP. And should circumstances be different, you might even be typed as an INTJ. So of course this goes, if I were to explain this, right, then it goes into the discussion of the theory of, can people's personality change? Based on the theory of MBTI is that no, your personalities cannot really change. If you're INTP at birth, you're INTP when you die. For me, again, the way that I see it, right, is that there is no point to actually discuss and fight about this. Because why the hell does it matter whether or not personality change over time? So what if it does? So what if it doesn't? It doesn't change the fact. The only thing that should matter to you is that you must never forego your personality just so that you can fit into the realm of INTP. What are some examples when you let your personality type define who you are as a person? If you are INTP, then you can say that, like, what is INTP known for? INTP is known for logic, right? INTP is known for maybe being messy, is known for being a nerd, if you are talking about the stereotype, because you can say that it's easy for people to understand things in terms of stereotype, right? It's known to be a nerd, it's known to be a loner, etc. So you can say that like, well, I type as an INTP, and I really relate to the strength of INTP, right? I really do think that I'm a very logical person. I really do think that maybe to a certain extent you can say that like there's a weakness. INTP weakness is FE, right? Which is I can't interact with people very well. So I'm very awkward. So you can say that like, wow, this type me perfectly because I am an awkward person who is very logical and I have trouble, and INTP is known for having difficulty with interacting with people, and to a certain extent not that much success when it comes down to the relation with the opposite sex, right? So you can say that like, well, this describes me so well. But what happens if you want to grow beyond the stereotype of INTP? So the issue with using logic is that if you run into an issue of like, well, I'm starting to use feelings because again somebody asks you, hey, do you want the blue birthday cake or the red birthday cake? And then you start to figure out that like, hey, maybe I want the blue birthday cake. But then because of that, you stop yourself, right? You stop yourself from getting the blue birthday cake because you would say that like, hey, that's not a very logical way to actually go about it. If I am an INTP, then what I'll be doing is that I'll be using logic, and I'm going to calculate that like, oh, what is the benefit of this? What's the benefit of this? And maybe this person who shared about MBTI, right? This person, Elong from the internet, told me that logic is based on equation, and by right, if let's say we are just talking in terms of pure logic itself, then I wouldn't be able to make a inference, right? Because you can say that I can give the pros and cons of red cake, I can give the pros and cons of blue cake, and because of that, I shouldn't be able to figure it out. So maybe instead of me saying that I want blue cake, then now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actively change my action so that I'm going to say that I have no idea. And you can say that this is an example of limiting. And the issue when it comes down to taking MBTI to the extreme end is always that if you start to believe that, okay, I am INTP, or anything, right? I'm INTJ, or I'm INFP, or I am ISFP, or I am ISTJ, is that, well, if what I read and what the expert says about my personality and how I act is against my personalities, then what I'll do is I'll change myself. And this goes beyond just MBTI, because you can say that this goes back to horoscope, right? So you can say that what are Cancers known for? Cancers are known to be soft, gentle, and maybe a little bit moody. Then you can say that like, well, what if there's a situation that somebody were to make me unhappy, and because of that, I feel like I want to assert myself, but then I think back to myself, no, you're a Cancerian, you're Cancerian, you're soft, you're gentle, you shouldn't be acting in a very aggressive manner, you're not a fire type, right? You're not an Aries, you shouldn't act like this. And because of that, you take the shit that you wouldn't have if you didn't believe and you have no knowledge of horoscope. So the whole issue when it comes down to the fundamental thing that I feel like I do have to share with people before I actually go into function types, where I'm actually giving you more information when it comes down to MBTI, is you must always remember that whenever you're utilizing MBTI, it should always be on the benefit. You can say that if I were to give benefit of a doubt, the person who created MBTI, the whole basis of MBTI is supposed to be, 1, you learn about yourself. If you don't know anything about yourself, here's more information compared to 0. So this is the example of the 13-year-old, right? Well, I don't know about anything about myself. I want an expert to tell me who I am as a person. Then you can say that, well, congratulations. Here's a page report of what you qualified to be, right? Not who you are, but what you qualified to be. This is very different, right? You have to take note of these two different sentences, because once you say that, well, I am a INTP, then congratulations. Anything that you have learned beyond INTP is just going to be building a cage around your personality. There's like, no, INTP is like this, INTP have this limitation, INTP have this, and then you build a cage. Then you can say that if let's say I go into functions, right, then I say that, well, INTP use introverted thinking, which is logic, and INTP use extroverted feeling, which is understanding and being thoughtful and considerate about people. Then you can say that what if I'm utilizing introverted feeling? So I really want this thing, right? Who have never at one point in their life wanted anything? So for example, like I wanted a new computer. I wanted like I don't know anything, right? Fiction. If you like fiction, if you like books, I wanted this book, or I wanted this bag, I wanted this, I wanted that. If you ever wanted something, you are using introverted feeling, which means to say that even an INTP is going to use introverted feeling. Your personality type, your function is just going to tell you how often, predictably, that you're going to make decision based on that. That's all that it is, right? Fundamentally, I'll even go as far to say that if I take it to the extreme end, guess what? You are every single horoscope. You are not a Cancerian. You are everything, right? You are Aries, Aries, Pisces. I don't even remember like what's the order of the horoscope, right? But Aries, Pisces is probably third. I don't know. I know too much about horoscope for somebody who actually don't believe in horoscope, right? And I learn about horoscope because people believe in horoscope, believe it or not. But in any case, this is the fundamental issue, right? Which is just that you do not want to limit yourself. When you use MBTI and you use it as profiling, you must always remember one thing. Understanding people, and whenever you use a framework of such as MBTI, right, what you're basically doing is that, okay, I'm building more or less a framework of who you potentially could be. So this is you, because I read that, okay, you utilizes introverted thinking, and then you tend to be more sensory, then perhaps you are going to be a ISTP. So I built a characteristic of what I understand about ISTP, and you can even say that I put certain stereotypes into this to form a baseline of what more or less I predict that you are going to act in accordance of. But you can say that at any point of time, if you have shown me information that differs from this framework, I will use and replace the objective information into my framework. Which means to say that my framework will always break when new information comes in. Basically, you can say that if let's say you want to use the example of art and craft, right? This is the wire mesh that I'm building upon, and actual information is clay. So at some point is that I'm going to use the clay to actually cover the wire mesh, right? And even to a certain extent, you can say that, well, I might eyeball the hair part to create something that is not in the wireframe. So this is the actual framework of how you actually should use this to profile people. Not that, oh, you're INTP, okay, well, then I'm going to trust that you're going to act in accordance to INTP forever, right? Because the issue is that you can say that if I use the example of ISTJ, which is the expected behavior is that they follow rules and regulation. And if you overly trust MBTI to predict what this person is going to do, and you're going to say that, well, because ISTJ is going to act in accordance of rules and regulation, then you make and you commit certain actions that relies upon this person following rules and regulations, you are going to willingly screw yourself when this person doesn't do it. Because I can give a very good example of how a ISTJ wouldn't follow rules and regulation. If let's say right now you have an ISTJ who is known to follow rules because of, social harmony, and because rules is what establish our society. If without rules, what we basically are is animals, then you can say that rules and regulation and keeping their words is basically law to ISTJ, right? But if let's say right now what you have is that you have kidnapped the ISTJ's children, and you tell this person that, like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. You are going to break this contract, or I'm going to kill your children. What do you think this ISTJ is gonna do? Do you think this ISTJ is gonna go in accordance to rules and regulation and act in accordance of his introverted sensing? I know that right now, what is introverted sensing? Right, basically what I'm just saying is that will this person following rules and regulation, right? No, this person is not going to follow rules and regulation. This person is going to act in accordance of other things, such as introverted feeling, which is me and myself. What feelings? My concern, my family members. This is the only thing that this person is going to figure out. This person doesn't even care about extroverted feeling. What if this contract screws over humanity as a whole? I don't care. I only care about my family members. And I only care about my children. Right? Your contract, society as a whole, be damned. Be damned, man. I only care about my children. I only care about little Sally, little Timmy, and all I'm concerned is for their safety, right? Even if 100 people have to die. And this goes in accordance to the tribe mentality, right? I will value my own tribe mates more than I value other people. It's just basic human nature. So because of this, you must always understand that if you were to take MBTI as the gospel, you are going to make a lot of errors. The biggest error that you can potentially make is the one that I described at the start, which is you were to limit your development. So if let's say right now hypothetically everybody is clouds. Everybody are clouds, right? In the world. You can say that MBTI is basically saying that like, hey, that cloud look like a car. So now if let's say this is INTJ, right? Your INTJ is a car-shaped cloud. But if this cloud, and I know that clouds can't really think for themselves, but hypothetically, right, you know, if let's say we just suspend our belief for a moment that maybe clouds can think for themselves. If these clouds were to say that I am INTJ, I'm only going to be INTJ, you can say that this cloud is essentially building a cage around itself. And it will forever be limited by what it believes INTJ is. Whereas if they didn't do it, then they're just going to continue to grow, right? Their shape is going to continue to grow, right? Who knows, they're going to be a much bigger cloud in the future if they don't limit themselves. And again, I don't think that I actually touched on this point earlier on. I think that I actually accidentally glossed over this point. The whole purpose of the person who invented MBTI is for you to know and understand yourself and work on your weaknesses. That's the whole basis of MBTI. It's not intellectual trying to limit people to say that, well, you are here, and the limitation of this type is that they are maybe not that considerate. The whole purpose is not to find your weaknesses and stick to your weaknesses, because you can say that if I stick to who I understand INTJ to be, you are going to take all the benefits with all the weaknesses. You're going to say that, like, you know, well, what are some weaknesses of INTJ that I can think about? Maybe you can say that you're going to have little consideration of people as a whole because you focus so much on results. Then you can say that you take that weakness, right? But you can say that if you understand the MBTI and what INTJ is, you can actively work on your weaknesses while strengthening your strengths. That's what you should actually see MBTI as, right? As an opportunity to grow, not a way to limit yourself. And this is interchangeable for horoscope. If right now today you are learning horoscope and you are seeing it as like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, so that's why I'm acting in this way. Your horoscope, your MBTI is not an excuse for bad behavior. If anything, learning about your horoscope, learning about your MBTI, and knowing about those weaknesses and not doing anything about it is actually more wrong than if you knew nothing about horoscope and MBTI in the first place. So, in any case, this is where I'm going to end off the video. Remember, further down the line, as I share more and more about MBTI, right? My relation when it comes down to MBTI is always, I'm utilizing MBTI for my benefits. At any point of time, MBTI starts to be a hindrance or a liability to me, I will stop using MBTI. And I think that that's the most healthy way for you to see any framework, Enneagram, Ocean to a certain extent, right? As much as people put science into it. And you can say that, okay, well, there's certain limitation of even this viewpoint that I'm sharing, right? Because you can say the extreme end is that I let personality tests dictate who I am and who I will be, forever will be as a person, is one end. Then the extreme end is that, well, I'm just going to ignore everything, right? If let's say right now I'm somebody who is very low in openness, right? I'm not going to take anybody's viewpoints into consideration. I'm extremely low in agreeableness. Then you can say that I will actively ignore all of this and continue to be who I am as a person. You can even say that in the example, you're also limiting yourself. At the end of the day, anything in terms of knowledge of psychology, right, is supposed to serve to benefit you. When I put out videos of how to influence people, it's always how do you influence people for your benefit, right? Not so much of how do you actually limit yourself, how to actually be fearful of how people are going to manipulate us, right? If you're a human being and you have feelings, guess what? You are already susceptible to influence as much as you want to think that you are you are the masters of your own universe, right? The truth of the matter is that the more that you believe that people cannot influence you, the more easier you are, or the more susceptible you are to influence. But in any case, this is where I'm going to end off this video. If there's any queries, or you have any thoughts about this, or there's any blind spot that I missed, then feel free to let me know. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye.